Do you feel that when laws are drafted over a period of hundreds of years, that by the time it is put into force, the fear is that the interpretation of the law will not be the same as the intent would have been at the stage of drafting?
Well, undoubtedly. And I think that that's a problem that we face all the time. I mean, take for example, uh, let me give you real world examples. I mean, take for example the Telegraph Act. I think it was an act of 1910 or thereabouts. And when modern technology and means of telecommunication came in, uh, till we had new acts and new regulatory bodies like the TDSAT, when modern technology came in, for the longest time we were looking at uh, provisions of the Telegraph Act, or for that matter, the Electricity Act, and trying to apply them to modern technology, which the advent of which was 100 years later. So clearly, that is really a problem. But that is really also a reason why you have to appreciate the draftsmanship of some general legislations like the Contract Act or the IPC or the Transfer of Property Act, um, where you are looking at legislations which were enacted very much in the 19th century, and you are applying them quite conveniently and without necessarily any problems or hurdles to transactions which are taking place even today. So one way of overcoming this problem is uh, to enact new legislation, and to enact new legislation to perhaps deal with present commercial and social practices with a non-obstant clause to make it clear that the general earlier legislation as also the new legislation will both apply, but in the event of a conflict you will be governed by the later legislation, because that is the legislation that acutely has in context is it's enacted in context of a present day situation. So let me give you an example of that. I mean, again, I'm not taking an example of legislation which is very new, but let me give you an example of that. You oftentimes to a sale of goods dispute will apply the Contract Act as being the general enactment which regulates contracts, but you will also then apply the more specific principles of the Sale of Goods Act or the Partnership Act. And there is nothing which says that in a sale of goods dispute or in a partnership dispute you can never have recourse to the Contract Act. Of course you can, but the more specific is the later, and some of the specific problems would be governed by the later. And of course the Partnership Act is of 1932. The Sale of Goods Act is also, I can't remember the exact year, but it's around that time. The Contract Act is 1872. So though legislation separated by, let's say, 50 years are used in tandem to overcome the problem that you mentioned.
Between the grammatical and legal meaning of a particular provision, which interpretation would a court consider?
Well, actually, I don't look at them as two categories. The legal meaning is a meaning which will very often be the same as the grammatical meaning. So therefore, it's not as if the legal meaning and the grammatical meaning are mutually exclusive compartments. The grammatical meaning will very often be the legal meaning. And that's precisely what the literal rule of interpretation is, that you will prima facie assume that a plain, unambiguous grammatical meaning of words is really the legal meaning. But the legal meaning can sometimes be more than the grammatical meaning. And that's the point I was trying to make when I said that the more current trend is to say that very well, the grammatical meaning seems to be clear, but to be absolutely sure, I will take that as a point of departure or as a prima facie view of the legal meaning. I will search around it, may not be in too much depth. I would look at the preamble, I would look at other statutory provisions, and I may well come to the conclusion that what may appear to be an unambiguous grammatical meaning is actually not that unambiguous at all. And if I was to give it this, my prima facie view was to be carried to uh, its conclusion, I will be arriving at a meaning which is not necessarily the legal meaning. So if I can put it as an equation, grammatical meaning is oftentimes the whole or at least a subset of the legal meaning. And the legal meaning is the grammatical meaning in its entirety, or the grammatical meaning which is departed from because of other considerations which are brought to bear. So I don't look at them as two different circles in a Venn diagram. I look at them as really the legal meaning being the larger. The question is whether the grammatical meaning is coextensive with it or whether it is a smaller subset of it.
While analyzing a particular provision, should one first apply a strict and or literal interpretation, or can the interpretation be broader and or liberal at the outset?
I'll touch upon this briefly because I do want to get into presumptions. These are only presumptive, that when you're dealing with certain types of statutes, which is criminal statutes or statutes which have harsh consequences, you will read it strictly. And when you're dealing with social statutes or beneficial statutes, beneficial legislations, you will read it liberally. And that's the presumption. So the earlier view was that depending upon the type of legislation, there will be a presumption that we will apply strict or apply liberal. But the reason why I qualify that as being the earlier view is that there are now judgments of the Supreme Court which say that what was earlier this so-called strict approach or liberal approach, depending upon the type of legislation, is no longer the way in which courts are actually interpreting legislation. They are applying the same body of principles, namely grammatical, plain, contextual, mischief, purposive, to all legislations without any predisposition depending upon the type of legislation. So the earlier view clearly suggested what the question is suggesting, which is strict for some, liberal for others. The more current view, I think it's the judgment of ERA, is that we are not going to start with any predisposition, no matter what the type of legislation is.